All right, so I'm here with a fairly new friend of mine, Paul Cunnington. How are we doing?
Very good, very good.
We're
Nice and sunny.
we're at Alton Park for
Yeah.
Tuna Fest North, I think is the name of the show.
Indeed.
And we're here on the Howtech booth with Paul's S15 Silvia.
Beautiful.
Drift spec car. So how long have you had this car, Paul?
So I built this last year. I had a Nissan 14 which had a 15 front end on it before. It was getting a little bit tired. So last year I bought this at the start of COVID actually. Got a really good deal. And then once the season finished last year, I spent the whole winter, every hour that I had, putting everything into this and making a brand new car for this year effectively.
So you haven't done many events in this yet?
No. So I think the last event I did was the third event, the third time I've even driven it actually, to be fair. So quite a new build, still learning a lot about the chassis, but you know, really, really good actually, really fun.
All right, let's get right into it. So straight away, one of the most obvious things is all of this framework that we've got going on the front end. A lot of the front bodywork has been cut away, and we're running this pipe setup. Is this something that you learned through your S14 as well? Because it's quite similar, I guess, in its layout between the two cars, right?
Absolutely. So just development from the last car, with drifting, you know, it's inevitable occasionally you are going to get the odd little knocks. So you just need something which is lightweight and replaceable, quite simply. And you don't want all the excess baggage, essentially, which comes with a standard car. You don't want that there, so pretty much all gone. From a weight saving perspective, it does do a little bit, but generally it's just making things modular, easy to replace, and you can work on it a lot easier as well, get to things, makes life a lot better really.
We've got a couple of exposed pipes going on at the front. Are they like a jack point or something like that?
Yeah, so these pipes here, just obviously intercooler, these ones here, I've got a full bash bar system behind this.
Okay.
So this can take a knock without hurting anything. The other thing we also did on this, you'll notice that the intercooler just sits in line with the chassis. So you'll find on a lot of drift cars is the intercooler will be right within the bumper.
Yeah, but this is probably back a good, almost 20-30 centimetres from where it would sit on a standard Silvia.
It does make things a little bit tighter in the engine bay, but with the radiator being in the back of the car, it makes it, you know, possible to be done.
And that's mainly, again, if you have a frontal impact,
exactly.
You can protect the car.
It means that you're carrying on. So one of the biggest things in drifting is longevity and consistency. So if you're constantly braking your car or you have a little knock and it puts you out of competition, that's the end of your day. So especially with the new events, the way they come in and other formats, you've got to make your car reliable. So this was part of it. If I have a knock on the front, providing it's not catastrophic, I'm still back out. You know, I might not have a bumper, but I'm back out, which is a real good thing, really.
And of course, that also gives us an interesting thing that all your pipe runs to and from the intercooler are super short.
Yes,
to the
indeed.
point where it's almost a little bit of a tight fit down this
definitely.
the cold end.
Definitely.
So a real tight custom pipe having to make its way around, exacerbated by the fact that, of course, this isn't an SR20.
No.
This looks like a Toyota JZ to me.
Yeah, 2JZ.
2JZ, top and bottom, because I know 1.5 JZs with one JZ heads are a popular thing, but this is 2J.
Yeah, so full 2J. This is actually engine was based off Martin Richards, who's here today. I took the engine sort of setup around from what he'd done previously on his R32. So it's a 2JZ, complete full engine. It was from JDM Garage. It's not a fully built motor. It has like ACL racing bearings, it has ARP bolts, uprated head gasket, some cams, and then fully stripped down and rebuilt. I'll be honest with you, just a budget thing, but I wanted something that would do sort of 700 horsepower reliably, 600-700 horsepower, and it does.
That's the beauty of this 2JZ, isn't it? Is that like you can throw quite a lot at it. 600 or 700 horsepower on a stock bottom end is actually very doable.
Definitely.
On a lot of these cars, and you can throw a lot at it, which is really quite handy. You're not running the delete system for the throttle and the traction control and other things.
So I was going to put, and probably eventually I will do, an E-throttle. But to be honest with you, this power plant come out of the last car, and I'm building a new car, and I wanted to keep things as very much the same as possible because, again, I want reliability. I wanted it to work out the box. I didn't want other issues. I knew that this worked really well, so I didn't want to change anything essentially. So that's why we kept that as it was, a potential upgrade.
That makes sense. Yeah. So engine's fairly simple. Well, as far as 2JZ swaps go in Silvias.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with so much room for improvement. So what kind of power are we producing at the moment?
So this is 690 horsepower. That's on a flex fuel. We've got a flex fuel sensor in the corner over there.
Oh yeah.
So we're running 85, around about 55% when it's on 690 horsepower.
And the ECU will make the adjustments based on how much there is in there.
Literally. So like on the last event that we had, the Drift Pro event at Brands Hatch, I had some feedback from one of the judges, and he says your car looks too grippy. Pour more ethanol in it, not grippy anymore. That's just how it works, you know.
Right.
So you don't have to measure
it. You can control the power by changing the fuel mix.
And you don't have to, you know, it literally does whatever I want. Whatever I tip into that tank, it will adjust the ECU to suit and then make more power effectively.
And the turbo for 700 horsepower doesn't look physically that massive.
No, it is maxed out. It's a Garrett GTX 3076 Gen 2. It surprises a lot of people that it makes the power, but the thing for me on this, the reason we got this set up, it's got an 8.82 housing, is the boost response. So I have full 1.7 bar boost at 2,700 RPM. It has everything at that point.
Makes it much easier to drive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, you're not absolutely kicking the life out of the car as well.
Yeah,
so again, longevity.
You know, that's the drift engine turbo combination game has moved on so much lately. It used to be that, you know, if you wanted this much power, it was so like little torque band right at the top. It was such a hard car to drive.
Absolutely.
And now we can achieve that with, relatively speaking, much smaller compressors.
Indeed.
But you know, and again, even on the exhaust side, it's not like we're looking at massive amounts because it looks quite big, but a lot of that is actually the heat wrap rather than the downpipe. You know, often we're like used to seeing 4 or 5 inch downpipes on cars like this, and that's not the case here.
No, it works really well. The setup is really good. It is a 4-inch exhaust all the way back. At the minute, we've got a Turbo Smart wastegate on there. That's dumping to the ground. I think we're going to make some changes for the new regs on the MSA regs, so it'll get plumbed in. So I might lose a little bit of horsepower there, but I'll just try and add some more ethanol in to make the same power. That's the plan, really. That's the plan.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then we've got the oil cooler here running all very close to everything at the front. There's not a lot of space now that we've moved the intercooler back.
No, there isn't a lot of space. It's something potentially that I might change in the off season.
Right.
The only good thing about this is that if that gets damaged at that point, there's something seriously wrong because we've hit the chassis rail, we've absolutely written the car off. So that's why I was a little bit okay with it.
Yeah.
But
if you've done damage to this oil cooler at this stage, then you've got bigger problems than just the oil cooler being damaged.
Absolutely. So that's why I was kind of all right, but I think I might make some changes in the off season. I've got a few ideas of where to put it. So.
Okay. And then whilst we're in that area, the brake master cylinder that you're normally used to seeing over here has been replaced?
Yes, so the trouble is with drifting and a lot of racing as well is that you do a lot of left foot braking, and with the booster which comes on the stock cars, it makes the brakes great, but when you're on boost the brakes don't work effectively. You need vacuum to make that work, so your initial point down on the brakes great, and then you'll find yourself left foot braking and then you're having to stamp on the pedal more and more and more, and you find yourself like getting out your seat because you're trying to left foot brake and make it work. So we got rid of it for this car.
Right.
It's not as good, like the braking isn't as good, but it's just something you got to get used to effectively.
You can slow the car down by going sideways instead,
yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly.
On the brake.
Exactly.
So then in terms of how this is plunged, you're still foot braking across all 4 wheels, and then you have a separate system for the hydraulic handbrake?
I don't at the minute, but that is something that's going to happen.
Okay.
I do run a bias valve in there as well, though, so I pretty much put most of the brake in at the front wheels.
Okay.
But again, I do want to do that, a separate system, separate thing on there, which should work quite nicely.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And then whilst we're here, of course, key to any drift car setup is the front suspension. Set up for plenty of lock and other bits and pieces. So looking over the hot turrets there, we see that very distinctive blue that we see in a lot of drift cars these days. So I'm guessing this is a Wisefab setup?
That is indeed.
Yeah.
So this is the V2 Wisefab setup. Again, changed from this sort of the latter part of last year. We went from the V1 to the V2.
Oh, so you used a wise fab on your S14 as well?
Yeah, I did.
So you didn't just move the parts over; you got new version. Okay.
Yeah. But this steering is a lot nicer, especially on the high lock when you need it. You can actually pull it back, which is really good actually.
Oh, okay.
Really good, because the older wise fab, it was a little bit tricky when you get on the full lock. So.
Oh, right. So as in because it feels like the rods are straightening up to the point
basically,
where...
yeah. So it's pretty cool.
One of the things I understand with my limited drift suspension knowledge these days is that most Wisefab kits need your car to be considerably wider than standard in order to accommodate the knee.
Yeah.
So how much wider are you at the front here, Paul?
So these fenders are a 70mm fender.
Okay.
I think that the Wisefab pulls it out about 80mm, I think, something like that.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. It does bring it out a lot.
And then you're tucking it in by running quite a lot of camber. I mean, by drift car standards, it doesn't feel like a lot of camber.
No.
But
it's about 5 degrees of camber at the minute. Yeah. Some people do go more, sort of 6.5, but I find 5 works nicely for me. Still get good contact pattern on the tread when you're on full lock.
Sure.
One of the things that people don't realise why they do it, not just for looks, is when you go on full lock, your wheel basically drops over on itself. So you want to try and avoid that as much as possible. Hence the camber.
And then there's been so many schools of thoughts over the years as to what to do with other alignment things like toe, for example, has been an interesting one because people used to run a little bit of toe out to try and help open there, and then it started to go to a more neutral setup with minimal Ackerman as well and things. I mean, what's your take on that these days?
So I used to run cut knuckles, and I also run like a Driftworks drop knuckle. On those, I used to run a bit of toe out actually. Yeah, so round about I think on the cut knuckles, I nearly ran almost 2 degrees of toe out, I think it was. But then on the Wisefab system, it's a bit different now. So now I run this basically straight, a slight bit of toe out, so probably like, I don't know, 5 minutes aside, something like that. But the Ackerman side of things, I tried the car with just zero Ackerman, and it feels awful. Believe it or not, the car just skips forward, doesn't feel very good, so we have put a bit of Ackerman in it. And I noticed a lot of the top drivers, they were doing the same thing. I sort of took their ideas essentially, tried it, and I was like, oh, that's a different car, really good. So yeah, it has changed a lot, but I think it depends on the setup. As you say, a lot of the Japanese culture, cut knuckles, bang loads of light toe out. And
that's quite an old thing now. Like the modern cars aren't doing that so much, but that used to be a thing. Because like back before we had the technology to have this kind of levels of lock. I mean, like how many degrees of lock can you get now out of a
I think it's about 70. Something.
Yeah. So then, even the bottom arms are designed in such a design so that they don't interfere with the wheels and as they rotate. But back in the old days, we used to have a situation where, because you didn't have that lock, you would actually slide the car in and then understeer the front deliberately so that you're kind of going into an all four-wheel sliding
drift,
away. Whereas now, because you can have that lock, the front wheels stay pointing exactly where we're supposed to be going, right? So like it's amazing to see that in 20 years how much the tech and the driving style has evolved
100%,
in how it's going.
Definitely.
So then
same thing about the tyres as well, like you just mentioned there. They're so sticky, the tyres now. These are a Max Sport tyre, but I don't think I'd want to run them on a circuit going round, but they work so well from cold. So literally, you just got all the grip immediately, effectively on these, which is what you need.
Front tyre grip, you just want as much as you can get nowadays, can't you? Yeah.
Exactly.
This is an interesting looking wheel. What are these wheels?
So these are a Strom DS25 wheel. The reason I got these, they're a specific drift wheel. Now, if you was on a circuit car, perhaps these wouldn't be the wheels for you, but from a drift perspective, they are so strong. With drifting, inevitably, because you're getting so close, high speed, you're really pushing on, you do get some knocks.
Yeah, and if you're chasing, it's so easy for your front wheels, which are poking out, to actually then hit the next car along.
So the reason I bought these, I was actually battling Dwayne McKeever, and he was chasing me, and he gave my back wheel a bit of a knock. My back wheel obliterated itself. His front Strom stayed intact. So I was like, I want me some of them, basically. I went for about 3 wheels last year. I was like, we're not having that again. So yeah, I bought these wheels for that. They're heavy, they wouldn't be a lightweight wheel, but they work really well for drifting.
Okay. Is there possibly a case for that extra momentum in the weight of it, making the car a little more, not so much stable, but maybe easier to steer because it's not flicking from side to side? I don't know how much of that wheel weight you'd feel in the lock, especially when you're letting the car steer itself.
Potentially. I haven't really felt it, but then again, I've only drove these wheels on this car, so it's a little bit tricky to be able to give a comparison. But
now, braking setups aren't normally that much of a focus on a drift car, but I see you've got some AP calipers going on here. Because a lot of people don't run big brakes because you get a clearance issue on the caliper against the suspension arm, right?
Absolutely.
But you're not having such issues.
No, with the WisePad now, you have got all the clearance that you need. If I'm being honest with you, I bought Skyline, was the first Japanese car I ever bought, and these brakes just come on it. But actually, now, and I know a lot of people don't go on about the braking so much, but when you're in such high speed and you're going down to such slow speeds now with some of the circuits, it really helps to have some good brakes which do it. The obvious danger with these though is I have to make sure that these are warm before they go, and that can sometimes be a bit of an issue.
Initial bite is something that's actually quite important, so if you haven't got that, if they're not warm, then you could end up having a few issues. That's really interesting.
Indeed.
All right, so we'll just work our way down. Body-wise, what kind of body kit and aero have you got going on?
So this is a full Origin Labo kit.
Oh, okay.
On the car, we've got some carbon fibre doors, so you can give them a good whack and not have a problem with them.
I love people who use carbon on their race cars because they just abuse them. Like people who have like carbon fibre splitters just stand on them and stuff, and there's you just kicking the door there as well.
It's got to be built to. I mean, there's a nice big whack here that it got, and that's, you know, if that was one of these doors are so like hard to find now, the standard things. It would make life very, very difficult for me. So that's had a whack and completely fine, you know. It works really well with the carbon.
So the front bumper, the bonnet, all Origin as well?
So the bonnet is actually a Nismo bonnet. That's a carbon fibre one. It's got a little bit of hot just on the vent there, just where the turbo is. Have to sort that in the off season, I guess. The rear of the car, we're running a Fibre Factory full clamshell. We've got Origin Labo over fenders, fiberglass rear hood, D-Max rear spoiler, and actually a completely bone stock rear bumper. Because the good thing is about these rear bumpers, the stock ones, is they're like a plastic. So it's not like the fiberglass where it can break up. They actually take a lot of damage.
They are very strong.
Really strong. So that's why we went for that. I like the cut look anyway, so it's all gone, so can't destroy
it. Takes a lot of the drag out. It's surprisingly how much of an air brake the rear can be.
Definitely. I mean, the main reason I did it was because when we're going around looking at clipping points and all that sort of thing, you do tend to drag bumpers off when they're lower to the ground. So once I did this early on my sort of drifting days, it made a big difference, and I wasn't destroying bumpers every 5 minutes, which was quite helpful, like you say.
Let's now that we're at the back of the car,
should we take the boot off?
We can do, that'll be fantastic. Yeah, let's.
It's a little bit messy, but you get the idea.
It's a race car. It's supposed to be a little bit messy, right? So we've got the fuel cell tucked right behind. So have you had to create a new firewall as such between the cabin and where that sits? Because this is where the rear seats normally would sit around here.
Pretty much where this is, this piece of metal here, that's pretty much where the seats would be. So as you said, put the fuel cell in the back. We've removed the standard tank. The main reason for removing the standard tank, at the minute it doesn't have it, but I will be getting a winter's differential at some point, so we can have adjustable back end.
Right.
But we did this setup building the new car. It also allows me to put 3 fuel pumps in there, all really nicely. With it running ethanol, you've got to have everything like perfect with your lines, etc. So it makes a big difference there. A lot of work goes into that.
It's quite a big tank for a drift car. A lot of the time people choose not to go with something so big.
Well, the reason I like it is because if you notice where it's at, we're right over the back of the car. So we're literally putting weight down at the back. Because we remove so much, that's the whole thing for me is, right, I want to get the weight back in. You know, where can I put it? Let's put it over the wheels.
That's super interesting, because I was just thinking, like, a lot of race cars try to move their fuel tank to the center of gravity, so that no matter whether they have a full tank or an empty tank, it doesn't affect the balance.
Yes.
But in your case, you're tuning the weight balance by how much fuel you have in, because you're not using that much fuel because the runs are short.
Yeah.
So if you want more weight at the back, you just fill the tank to the brim.
Yeah.
If you don't want as much, you can run it relatively empty and you're still okay.
Exactly.
That's actually
it's
that's cleverer than I thought. That's actually really good, because you're not allowed to use like water tanks, for example, to weigh your car down for safety reasons and other things for the regulations. But how much you fill your fuel tank with is...
So this is a 40-litre tank.
Okay.
And as you said, I pretty much run it as topped up as I can be most of the time. It depends on what I want it to do. If I need to lose a bit of grip as well, I can take a bit of weight out of it by taking less fuel. As you mentioned as well, with the engine at the front, that engine is not designed for this chassis, so it's a lot bigger, a lot heavier than what would be in this car. So we've got to try and distribute the weight across, otherwise we're just going to have a nose heavy car which is going to make no grip at the back.
That's changed a lot over the years as well, isn't it? Like, there used to be this idea that you put the weight at the front and allow the car to swing around the centre of gravity, and now, like, now that the game has moved on, we're trying to put so much weight over the back wheels, get more traction to go faster and faster and faster, right?
Of course, but that's why we did that. I mean, there's reasons, as I said earlier, about the intercooler, and that's where the radiator comes in. So the radiator goes at the back of the car. We run a Jaguar fan on the back. It's off a 3-litre diesel, believe it or not.
That is a pretty large fan.
Yeah.
Do you know how big that is in terms of diameter?
I think it's around about 16 inches, something like that.
16 inches.
So it's a big old fan.
It's about the size of a basketball hoop.
Pretty much.
For reference, I think, yeah.
We have to remove the standard water pump for that, because the standard water pump doesn't actually flow enough water for this. So we run an electric pump instead.
And that's this here. Looks like a mini turbo.
Pretty much, yeah. A lot of people say, what you got a turbo in the back for? So I know it's
and then, the line that you then run forwards is substantial. That's a good 2.5 inches or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty
like
much.
50, 60 millimetres, probably.
That's about there. I mean, we run these AN lines, we run them to basically the solid part of the car underneath. We then go into an aluminium tube underneath the car.
Okay.
And there's a couple of reasons behind that. There's one reason, obviously, if you come off, you don't want to damage your pipes as best as you can. But the other reason is for cooling as well. So underneath the car, I'm actually getting like a cooling effect also, which works really nicely to help keep the temps down on these cars.
So you've got your radiator back here, and you fabricated this mount that then comes to the rear suspension mount there.
That's it.
And then also meets, again, you've created a new rear section.
Yes.
So that you can prevent taking a knock, and then nothing gets dragged down by it or anything like that. Interesting how you've got this little V underneath as well to
it's a jacking point. It's a jacking point.
Oh, that's a jacking point.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just so you can jack it easily.
Yeah. I remember jacking from the diff all those.
I always used to. It used to be the best place, but with this system, we run a 38mm tube, and this is connected to the chassis all the way around. We don't want that one to bend, so we want the other tubes to bend. So I think these are a 25mm tube.
And
so
it's bolted in as well.
Yeah, bolts on these are. So if I have a crash on the back, these are just easily replaceable, because I don't want any of this to be hit. So again, trying to keep that reliability with the car. If I get a knock, it's just a case of a cosmetic problem, which I can just deal with. So.
And then, between moving the rad back here and all the coolant that then moves back, do you have an idea of how much weight you've actually managed to move back?
I'm not sure on the exact
because the rad
numbers,
itself is going to contain a good amount. You're not talking a few kilos, are you? You're talking like maybe 20, 30 kilos.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think there's about 20 litres in this, 22 litres I think of water in the whole
thing. That would
thing.
be for the whole system.
For the whole system,
but a good amount of it will be back here. So.
Definitely. But it does make a big difference. A lot of the Pro Spec drift cars now that you will see will have this. There's only a few out there which are not nowadays.
Sure. And then obviously this was covered here across earlier, and the airflow just comes down from the roofline. Is that enough airflow to keep it cool?
It works really well. So this setup, on a lot of drift cars, they do struggle with cooling, but this setup works really well. So we just got it right with the correct fan. It's a dual pass radiator as well, so we're getting maximum cooling out the radiator. We get up to temps of around I think about 95 degrees when I do 2 runs. The car supposed to run stock at 90 degrees,
Right.
so I'm really not making a lot of heat in this compared to some of the other cars out there. Just trying to get it right, and it's just all that is based off experience of trying things that didn't work, trying something else, speaking to people, and just making something.
Well, you know, when we were talking privately earlier, the drift community is actually really open about that. There are no real secrets in terms of setup. Everybody wants everybody else to have an equally awesome car.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of nice that we're still at that place where we can be nice to each other in terms of the setup. And you've got your battery at the back here as well. So obviously on the standard car, that's at the front, so that's been moved back. Tiny little battery, just enough to keep it running.
Pretty
no
much.
need for. You know, again, you know, you could have gone with something quite heavy here just to put a bit more weight over the back, but at the same time, it just gets in the way, doesn't it?
It does. We run a big alternator to compensate as well. So we run a 180 amp alternator, which is a BMW one actually, just to compensate. The guy who did all the wiring loom, Hypermotive, Brad, he bullies me terribly for the size of my battery, if I'm being honest. But you know, it works. That's what I say. It works. But if you do a couple of starts where it doesn't start like 4 times, the battery's flat. You know, so you know, but it works really, really well actually. Really, really well.
Very good. And then we didn't talk about your dampers at the front and the rear. But, are they matching set for front and rear dampers?
So these are Driftworks CS2 coilover.
Okay. Yep.
So I run quite a hard suspension setup on the back. But I run the dampening quite soft. So a lot of the way the professional drift cars are running now is around about 4 kilo springs. These are actually, I think these are a 6 or a 7. I think they're 6 or 7, so they're quite hard.
But if you're hard sprung but quite soft damping, does it not make quite a bouncy ride?
A little bit, yes. A little bit, yes. But we're after the squat to make the car squat down and go. It depends on the circuits as well. Like Brands, obviously, it's so soft and nice. We can change.
Yeah, it's almost like it requires you to be smooth on the throttle, because if you keep bouncing up and down on the throttle, the back of the car will bounce up and down. But then I guess that if you flip that, it also means that you can move the weight around by using the throttle, right?
Exactly. So something that I was taught when I was drifting, the first time I got in the car, they say you don't steer with this, you steer with your right foot, and that's just the way I've sort of been taught to drive basically. So it's my style. So yeah, really good fun. Really good.
So you have the Driftworks dampers, and in terms of the rear suspension arms, we have not a matching Wisefab set going on here. What do we got going on here, Paul?
So on the back end, I'm running a Driftworks Geomaster 2 knuckle, and I run this stock lower arms. Everything else is a Jap speed arm. They've actually been really good. I mean, these Jap speed arms have been on my car now with me for around about 3 years. So they work really well.
So you use them on the previous car as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got complete spares ready to go in the event of an accident, but they've worked really well for me up to now.
Can you tell me about these knuckles then? So what does it change in terms of the alignment that makes it better than the standard knuckle?
So the main thing is on these knuckles, they're a drop knuckle. So obviously the car is lower than the standard position. And if I was to lower the car to this height on a standard knuckle, what you would see is the suspension arms, as you see them now, they're actually level and flat. The suspension arms would be at an angle, which gives a different geometry to the
roll
suspension.
center adjustment,
Exactly.
Like that,
So effectively, I just get what's designed for the car is there effectively, whereas if I didn't run them, I'd be doing something different.
It's the stock angle of the arms, but the whole car is lower.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So that's the main reason I run them, and I know there is others out there with the Wisefab side of things. But if I'm being truthful, it's generally down to a cost thing. The other thing with the Wisefab ones is that they don't take knocks as well as what these do. They're a lot more beefier, the standard things.
Actually, that was interesting you should say that, because I always thought when looking at the Wisefab arms that they don't look that thick or beefy. So
they've designed them now with a collapsible rod. I think it's the traction rod or the tow rod. It's a collapsible rod, which is really good, so you don't actually break the knuckle. But if you're in the event, I don't want my rod to collapse. I'd rather it be as strong as possible, but then that has its downsides, because you could be going, well, where else are you putting the throttle? So you put it in the subframe, the chassis, all that sort of thing. So, you know, it has its pros and cons, but for me, it works well just to have these at the minute. You know?
And finally there at the back, we have the diff. Is it is it a Toyota diff to match the JZ engine, or is it a Nissan diff?
So believe it or not, they're getting rarer and rarer, these diffs. It's off a Nissan GTR V-Spec. So yeah, I have an R34 or an R33, I can't remember which one. But yeah, they're really strong. A lot of the drifters were running these, but as the value goes up, I think you're probably going to see less and less of them.
And you're using GTR drive shafts to match it?
Yeah, GTR drive shaft, yeah.
Yeah, it's an easy swap on the Silvias.
It's literally bolt on. You bolt the diff in, it goes in the exact same position. The only difference is the hubs. You just have to change the bearing carrier, and that's it. And they're on, effectively. So it works really well.
Great.
Works really well.
So let's go inside.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, nice, tidy interior going on.
Yeah.
And immediately we see the Haltech display for everything that you need to see there, tucked right behind your steering wheel. You probably don't spend a lot of time looking at it during the middle of a run, do you?
No.
It's just mostly for monitoring data between and watching temperatures.
Pretty much. The only good thing is about the Haltech though, they have got a lot of safety functions on them. So in terms of this, it lights up all different colours if something's going on. So like you say, when you're in the middle of a run, it's very difficult to see what's going on. So very simply, the whole dash can go red for me, or you know, my coolant one is a blue one. So if it's getting hot, like, the whole thing will go up blue, and it's got flashing lights at you to say stop or slow down, or it's doing something. So that's really, really good about the Haltech side of things.
Very good. And then, just on a safety point, I'm presuming that's your fire extinguisher. Just
it is indeed, yeah.
Protect your balls.
Yes, indeed. It's a really weird rule. I never really understood it, but with the fire extinguisher side of things, you're not supposed to point it directly at you. And I guess that's if you're trying to get out and you've got.
You don't want to choke yourself. That's the other issue. Yeah.
But you've got to point it sort of down towards you, but not on you, effectively.
Yep. Carry on.
Sorry, inside with the Haltech side as well, we're running the Nexar 5 ECU. So that basically has got a PDM built in. It was the first one in the UK to be done. I think Martin's was second.
Right.
So the whole car is controlled by the one unit now, which is pretty nice. Which is why we can have that lovely keypad. Everything can be seen in there effectively.
All done off the one system. And you have a Samsonite transmission here, sequential?
Yeah, so Samsonite 4-speed. I'd like it to make it into a 5 at some point, so I could maybe drive it on the road if at some point.
Is this road legal?
Not yet. It will be though. The way we've, well actually Luke had put in, and the guys at Hypermotive who did the wiring loom, we've got all the indicators and everything working to make it road legal effectively. So it will be at some point, just not yet.
Right, and then of course every drifter's best friend, hydraulic handbrake.
Indeed,
going on here as well. Otherwise, roll cage is all to spec here.
Yeah.
Beefy door bars are a must on a drift car because
Definitely.
that is where you're most likely to get hit.
Exactly. So this is a full FIA roll cage. This has all been TIG welded as well by a chap called Danny Lee. He did all this work at Drift Creations. Months and months of work into this, and going over regs like they've gone out of fashion. I think when we built it, we had sort of 3 or 4 sets of regs, and just trying to cherry pick the points on each one. One will say
so
you can do
pass
something
for everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So it does it all. I think I mentioned the wiring loom in the car. It's a full F1 spec wiring loom done by Hypermotive, as I said. So this can...
But we can't see any of it, which shows how tidy a job it is.
Exactly. That's the whole point about it. But it's a very good loom, because when we first took this car out, when we debuted it, I had a problem with one of the vent pipes in the fuel. The back end of the car actually set on fire. The wiring, let's put it this way, so there was one part on the car which didn't have their wiring, just a small battery isolator. That wiring was just copper. Their wiring, it still made me do the rest of the day, because it took that much of a hit with the fire, but works really well. Really pleased to have that in the car, to know that I haven't got a wiring problem. You know, it's really good.
Right. All right, Paul. Well, thanks for showing us around your car.
Yeah.
If they want to see more of your action and so on, where should we find you on your socials?
Yeah, so it's at Paulie C Drifting. That's both on my Instagram and on my Facebook. Yeah, just there actually. We'll be back out in the car officially for August Bank Holiday at Donington. and then there's a further round at Snetterton towards the end of the
UK
year.
Drift Pro
That's
Championship.
it. That's it. That's the one right next. So you may see it a couple of practice days. You know, hit me up, come and have a look. You know, more than welcome.
All right, thanks very much, Paul.
No worries.
Hopefully more of these, right?
Oh right, definitely. The more we get of those, I might have a set of coilovers at the end. So happy days.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
No worries.
That
You
was.
said you wanted geek out, so that's what you got.